Welcome to today's panel on VR. My name is Adam Cox. I'll be presenting a very short presentation on the potential of VR before we move to our panel with some of the distinguished guests we have over here. But very quickly, what is Future Source? Who am I? Well, basically, I'm a market analyst. We've recently published a report looking at the potential of virtual reality, really to understand if VR is another 3D. There's a lot of hype around virtual reality. There's a lot of excitement around virtual reality, but there was also that around 3D, and look where that's got us now. So the idea is that we'll take you through the whys. Why are we looking at VR now? What are the drivers? Before turning to the panel to talk about the challenges that are currently being faced within production and post-production, and then really what are the barriers to wider consumer adoption. And then we'll hopefully sum up by really deciding if VR has legs or it's another 3D. Okay. So why VR? Why now? VR is not new. The idea of VR has been around in science fiction for a long time. There have been attempts before, but this is the first time it's really got momentum. For consumers, why VR? Well, it's a wow experience. If it's done right, of course. Content is always king. But when done right, VR is incredible. It's a really, really compelling experience. And that's why there's so much hype around it. The hype, in turn, has led to huge amounts of investment. Everyone knows about the Facebook investment in Oculus. It's just ridiculous amounts. Billions of pounds being invested, not just in VR, in the related augmented and mixed realities as well. Just ridiculous sums of money being talked about for a technology that's as yet unproven. But for companies outside the hardware space, why VR? Well, really, it's an opportunity for more content, more revenue streams. Why are broadcasters looking at this? Why are games companies looking at this? Well, because they can add revenue, simply. But why now? Well, really, smartphone technology has played a really big role in this. When you consider how many smartphones are being shipped worldwide and the technology advances that are being made year on year, it's very clear to see that the displays, the processing technology that's getting more powerful and smaller has easily translated into virtual reality. So the price has come down, made it more affordable, and the technology has improved. So VR, we know VR in terms of the consumer applications it's most likely being used for and going to be used for. These include gaming. Obviously, it's pretty much one of the big drivers there. Mobile, console, and PC, right across the board. Video, a wide range, really. You name the type of video. Movies, sports, music videos, commercials, and one we haven't written on there because no one likes to talk about it, but adult content is going to be really, really big for VR. But not just consumer applications. The world of B2B holds huge potential for virtual reality. So we've got healthcare. Some of you may have heard of the example where a burns victim was treated, shown a VR experience where they were in sub-zero temperatures. It was all frozen around them. And that was actually more effective pain relief than morphine by 20%, I believe. So there are lots of little niche areas that could be very, very interesting. Simulations, obviously, a really, really big one as well. It's not going to be as large a market as the consumer side of things, but it's still very, very exciting. But everything lives and dies with what the consumers think, because this funds the overall industry. If consumers don't buy into virtual reality, there's no money to invest in new technologies, and it'll die a death like 3D. So we conducted some research. We spoke to 7,000 people in the US, Germany, UK, France. And actually, awareness currently isn't too bad. 41%, it could be a lot better, obviously, but people are aware. But that goes back to what I was saying earlier about it's not a new technology. The real crucial thing here is how many people have tried VR. Just by show of hands, how many people have tried virtual reality? Right. The vast majority. If you haven't, go out and try it. You have to experience VR to understand the potential it holds. Now, not all experiences are going to be incredible, obviously. The range of experiences do differ significantly from the low end, the Google Cardboard, right up to the most expensive, which is the HTC Vive, which is $800 for the headset plus the PC you need to run it on. So that's, there's a wealth of experiences out there. And that's why really you're not really seeing many people try it. So of the 2,000 people who are aware of VR, only 8% have actually tried it. This is a big, big problem. It needs to improve. That equates to 244 people out of the initial 7,000. And out of that, the majority, over half, were satisfied. They were quite impressed by the experiences they had. And actually, if you look at the other side of it, a lower proportion were disinterested, not impressed. So that's quite a positive message. But trying VR is absolutely key. You're all here today because you're enthusiasts or you're in the industry or you're looking at VR for whatever reason. If you talked about Joe Blogs on the street, it's getting them to try VR, which is really, really important. And this is where you're going to see retail stores like John Lewis's of this world play a really important role, because outside of trade shows, maybe some events where you've got promotional activities, this is where you're going to see the trials happening. So what kind of content do people want to see? Well, surprisingly, movies was top. We always thought games was going to come out on top, but movies was top. 39% of people citing that. This is of people who were aware of VR. We didn't ask adult. People wouldn't answer honestly anyway, so there's no point. But you'd expect that to be quite high. Adult has been a driving force for things like streaming of video, DVDs, the internet. It's going to be a driving force here as well. But the interesting thing is, when you factor in if people have made existing financial commitments to these areas, so drilling down the data a little bit further, actually these percentages increase. So people with a movie subscription, for example, over half were interested in trying VR. Games, 61%, where they owned a console, and sports, 45%. So this is not everyone wanting to try VR, and that's going to be the case. We're going to see VR really act as a separate medium. It's not going to replace traditional gaming. It's not going to replace traditional video, traditional content. It's a separate medium that is not going to be suitable or of interest to everybody. And this is shown by our analysis looking at how much the content, VR content, will be worth. So we estimate by 2020, the virtual reality consumer spend on content will be $8.3 billion, which sounds like a hell of a lot of money. That's split between games and video including pay TV, electronic sell-through, video on demand, you name it, any kind of video. But actually, that equates to just 2% approximately of the global spend. So VR is coming, we see it, but it's going to be fairly niche, at least for the short term. It'll grow longer term, but we are very, very early days. The big headsets out there, the real headline grabbers, the Rift, the Vive, the PlayStation VR, they're not out yet. So we're very, very early days. And this translates into the consumer headset, HMD is head-mounted display, the sales. So we're expecting sales of 67 million units globally by 2020 or in 2020. Mainly split by mobile. It's more affordable. It's easier to get hold of this. You don't have to buy an extra PC or a console. With integrated HMD sales, so where you've got the display and all the processing in the headset, so the top end being the smaller of those two proportions. But that equates to 6% of global household penetration. It is higher when you look at certain more advanced countries. So the US, for example, is more like 20%. But again, very early days. VR is happening. Well, our opinions, based on our research and our analysis, VR is happening. But there are barriers that need to be overcome before this becomes a reality. And that's why we're going to speak to these guys. So, while I move over, if maybe you could start off, Adam, by introducing yourself,
no problem.
company, what you do in VR.
Sure.
We'll move along the line. Thank you.
My name's Adam Grint. I'm from The Mill. I'm a creative director at The Mill. And we're getting heavily into VR now for all these reasons. I think for visual effects, it's an incredibly exciting time. You know, we to combine everything that we've learned over the last 25 years and put it into this new space is really what we're trying to do, and really harness all that kind of cinematic legacy, I guess, and all our experience in VFX and plug it into VR. Lots of people doing interesting stuff, but I think with that kind of skill set, it's going to produce some pretty interesting results. Already we've done a few VR experiences, quite a range actually. We did a big project for Google about a year ago that was out on the tablets, actually on our stand out there, called Help, which was really quite an ambitious project, big VFX number. You'll see if you watch it, there's aliens, explosions, all sorts of things, but tied into a narrative story as well. Just by watching it, you can kind of tell that it's a bit of a beast of an undertaking at this stage when a lot of the kind of technology and stuff is unproven. So that was a huge project, and I definitely advise having a look at that when you're out there. At the other end of the scale, we've in the process of completing a project for a big newspaper broadsheet. I'm apparently not allowed to say the name of it, otherwise I might get a red dot on my head. But anyway, that will be out very soon. And that's the other end of the scale because it's really about factual VR, kind of documentary VR. And it's very, very true. It's not fictionalized at all. It's very, very true to the primary sources that we used for it. So I think that's a very, very interesting area that perhaps a lot of people haven't kind of touched on yet, about how to tell a kind of journalistic story in VR. And then in the middle, we do a lot of kind of commercial campaigns. There's one out there with Gatorade and Dos Equis as well, which are 360 video experiences.
Cool. I'm Mike Bithell. I'm an independent game developer. So we're coming at it from the kind of completely opposite end of the spectrum. We're coming at it from the games background. My background is I made games like Thomas Was Alone and Volume, which were kind of independent, kind of niche indie games. And now we're working on a PlayStation VR exclusive game called Volume Coder, which is a game where you're in a lovely room and you're kind of working out how to steal things and do robberies, kind of a Tony Stark experience on kind of this big VR desk, which is pretty cool. It's interesting, even the conversations we've had already about the differences in approaches that we're going to take computer games and kind of use some filmic stuff to bring them to VR and make VR feel great and be a cool experience. And when I talk to film people, it's the opposite. It's kind of bringing all those amazing film skills and then trying to learn some things from the games industry and push those across. So it's already kind of the chat that I shouldn't really mention because you're not hearing that chat. It's kind of rude. But that's interesting to me that we're already finding those kind of overlaps.
And I'm Karl Woolley. I'm from Framestore, and I look after our VR studio in London. And much like The Mill, we're a VFX company that's 30 years old. There's about 1,500 of us, 35 of which sit within the VR studio, and we plug into the rest of the business to generate content from one end of the spectrum, which is 360 video-based content, of which we have also done a broadsheet style Google Cardboard experience, which I can tell you about.
Not the same one.
It's not the same one. For the New York Times, where they distributed, I think it's 1.2 million cardboard headsets with our content on it. And then at the other end of the spectrum, where we have links and relationships with film studios, we will also work on entertainment IPs like Avengers and Interstellar, Game of Thrones, and those tend to be real-time game engine-based things. And then in the middle, we kind of have a hybrid. But what we're about doing and why we started doing this is because it's interesting, some of the things that Adam said before, some of which I think, based on the research, you can't deny. But what I would say is it's no surprise that people are saying we want to see movies, games, porn, music in VR, because that's the things that at the moment. And until you've spent more than 2.5 years working in VR and playing with VR, you don't really know what you want to make because no one's really made anything proper yet. And also, like Adam said, it's quite interesting to make those kind of findings given no retail release of any product. And these things take time, adoption of TV, you know, all those things. So, yeah.
Very good. Hi, I'm Andy Mcnamara. I'm head of CG and immersive at Rush's post-production in London. Very similar to the guys at the Mill and Framestore. We've been we're pretty much a VFX company working in commercials. We're part of the Deluxe Entertainment Services Group, which is you might have heard of as one of the largest entertainment groups in the world. So it covers places like Method Studios, Allura, Company 3, Beast, and a few other subsidiaries in the States. All the different bits of Deluxe are kind of looking at VR as with some interest at the moment, and there's a number of initiatives around the world. We've been very similar to the guys at the Mill and Framestore. We've been investigating and testing the water with technology and creative projects over the last year, primarily with our advertising and commercials clients, and we're getting a fair bit of interest from traditional directors who want to get into this space. We've got a number of projects that are rolling through at the moment, which are NDA, so I can't tell you about them. But we should come out in the summer, but they're interesting. Like the guys said, I think there are no real VR experts at the moment. We're all trying our best to try and figure out how to use this new medium of communication and convey things. But I think between us and companies like Framestore and the Mill, I think you want to bring the production values of commercials and high-end movies to what we actually do in the VR area. So that's what kind of we're interested in, I think.
Hi, I'm Mohen Leo. I work for Industrial Light and Magic. I'm a visual effects supervisor. And then maybe the same for some of the visual effects companies, the other ones as well. Is like the way we first arrived at dealing with this technology was actually not so much about the consumer market, but one of the first touch points for us were actually film production and dealing with directors, because we've always faced like that problem of having directors, deal with virtual environments, virtual assets, and having nothing tangible to see them when they're going on a blue screen stage with a guy with a tennis ball. And so for a long time, we played with real-time computer graphics to let, directors kind of have windows into virtual worlds, with something like an iPad looking into, a space, and you have a mocap performance, but through the window they can see like a transformer in the background. And then we started a couple of years ago involving some of the VR technology in that as well, looking at like virtual scouting, letting a director walk through a virtual version of a set before it's built. And I think only really over the last year and a half, as sort of this general interest in that group, we really thought about like, well, if you can have a director step into like the world of his movie, then obviously the next logical step is to let audiences step into that world as well. And so we've spun up a separate group, really, ILMX Lab, that focuses on VR and other interactive experiences as well. And so they've done a few more like 360 video oriented experiences related to Star Wars. And definitely working on more interactive stuff now as well. And I think that is for us a really great opportunity to explore like a new form of storytelling, which is really what our company's always done.
Okay, can I just jump in there just very, very quickly? Sorry, John. I'll come back to you in 2 seconds. I've got an announcement to make, apparently. Darren O'Kelly, apparently you're needed next door for an industry panel. If there's a
Shame.
Darren O'Kelly, please stand up.
Good luck.
Sorry, John.
Okay, so I'm Jonathan Starck from the Foundry. I'm head of research at the Foundry, and the Foundry produces software tools for the creative industries. You probably know us best for our Nuke compositor, which is used in high-end VFX production and post-production. So we're most interested at the moment in helping provide artists tools to work with and create 360 video or cinematic VR content. And the problem we see right now is there are a lot of pain points in just getting to create that video content to begin with. You've got to go out, you've got to shoot with lots of camera rigs, and you have a problem with stitching to create this 360 world. Just to get to that point of getting this new type of video is really painful. And then artists have to be able to work in this new 360 world that's very different to a normal camera image. So we're working on a new set of tools for Nuke that's aimed to kind of alleviate the problems and make the workflow a lot faster so that you can concentrate on just creating really nice experiences.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Well, on that note, I mean, it's led very nicely into the challenges faced in production. And maybe Jon, you could start us off then, just because you've been dealing with that. How serious are the challenges at the moment? You say that the cameras need to be developed and the tools need to be developed, but production is ongoing at the moment. So how much of what's happening is a workaround, and how much of it just needs evolving?
Well, there's different ends of the spectrum. It's actually quite easy to get going to shoot some 360 content. You can go out the door, you can buy a bunch of GoPros, there are even 360 action cams coming out quite soon. You can go and buy these things, bolt them together, and get these images, and there are tools out there like PT GUI, tools called Color, that allow you to stitch and create this content straight away. So there's quite a low barrier to entry, but there's quite a high barrier to creating really good content because it's quite hard to work with this 360 video world.
As soon as you get into stereo, it already gets a lot.
And that's just considering mono. The whole move to stereo and adding depth is a whole new world of pain.
I think though, and I do want to look at Adam, but I've been told I've got to face you when I talk, otherwise the microphone doesn't work, so I'm not being rude. Anyone that works in VFX or has been surrounded by VFX probably understands that everything is actually a workaround. So dealing with 360 video is just a bigger pain of a workaround than other workarounds that we have to do. At the lower end, if you like, you can get, I was at CES the other month and the floor was littered with different types of headsets and cameras and different entry points. There's lots of stuff at the low end, if you like the Ricoh Theta S camera, little thing with 2 lenses on the side that's really good to take out for reference, and GoPro rigs, each of which have plenty of problems. And at the very high end, you've got ARRI rigs and Red rigs and Techno cranes and all kinds of ways that you can use those cameras with VFX cheats to create 360 worlds. The area that I'm most interested in, because it's either really cheap and not that great or really expensive and good quality, but I'm not so overwhelmed by some 360 video in general myself. The interesting area, I think, is the area in the middle where tools from the Foundry and regular cameras, where you can have that, that middle ground of which there is none at the moment. If you want to go out and produce traditional content, you can get yourself a laptop and Creative Cloud and a camera, but that doesn't necessarily mean until you're skilled enough you're going to be able to create the best music video or short film. That takes time and experience, and it's much the same with 360 video as is VR. It's no surprise really that after 2.5, 3 years, and I know it's been around before, but in the modern sense of VR, it's no surprise that we haven't cracked it yet, because quite frankly, it's not been that long.
I think there's 2 angles to the question, isn't there? There's how do you shoot this content? What do you shoot it on? And I think there's some very interesting things happening with the cameras right now. And then there's how you shoot the content and what do you shoot for 360. I think there's very different things.
Definitely 2 separate things. I mean, it's funny, so I think we all get quite obsessed with the technology of this stuff as well, and we can come on to probably the more important thing, which is the creative, in a bit. But I think what Jon and Foundry and stuff are doing is really interesting. It's effectively allowing us to work in a traditional way, but on this huge lat long, but work on it, using our kind of traditional tool set, if you like. Because I did a music video for Professor Green about 6-7 years ago, which was 360, and we worked on it lat long all the way. So we were trying to cut mats on all these figures that were going all over the place. So it's not exactly an intuitive environment. So I applaud Jon for everything he's doing in terms of making a compositor's life easier. I'm traditionally a compositor, so that's good. I think also, 6-7 years, 10 years down the track, we'll probably slightly think back at this conversation about stitching and laugh, perhaps, because I hope we'll get to the stage where someone devises a camera, we don't have to do any stitching at all. It's a bit of a slightly silly process, isn't it? That we're creating 360 environments and we're having to bolt various images together. I mean, there's no technical way around that problem really at the moment, but in its simplest form, it seems a bit silly. The other thing I'd say is, if you are getting into this, then for God's sake, experiment. It's precisely what we're doing day in, day out. And we're probably not doing it, well, we have the backing of, some talented artists and stuff, but, really what we're doing is the same as what you can do. 2 days ago, I took actually only had one camera because I didn't have 4 of them, but I was trying to see how this camera would work as a rig and got the masking tape out. I wanted it a bit higher, so I took some dinner plates and stuck them on top, masking tape the thing down, moved the camera around, and you give yourself a 360 image and you get some idea of the sensor size and the lens and the parallax problems and stuff. So it's really back to basics. And the messages are we don't have like this sort of Tron style room full of bleeping computers. We've got some masking tape.
Also as well, everyone's talked about 360 video as the entry point, but remember, you can get Unity, for example, for free. You can get Unreal Engine for free, and you can get a second-hand Oculus Rift DK2 from a mate or a grown-up or something to try and give you one. And literally, you can start making content straight away and experimenting. And that's all we've been doing in our respective companies. And I think over the last year, what you found is there's been this level playing field of experimentation with all our competitors, really, and trying to work out how best to use this new medium. And we haven't cracked it. I mean, we're still experimenting, and even things like interactivity, which is yet to be really scratched the surface on how you actually do this and interact with spaces and move through them and tell narratives and storytelling. That's still yet to be done. So there's a huge amounts of potential there, and we're still trying to figure out how to do that.
Well, Mike, you're probably a good person to comment on this, coming from the games background.
It's fascinating listening to this, because honestly, before today, I'd seen 360 videos and thought, oh, those are really cool, but never thought about it as VR, which is interesting because it's mono, so you've got no 3D depth. You can do stereo, so 3D depth, but there's no parallax, there's no. So it's a very different experience to kind of. It's funny how you can work in the same technology and completely.
Can you write that down so I can print a poster and put it up in my
So
boardroom?
I think that I don't want to definitely want to sit at a film festival and knock filmed content over real-time content, but because there's definitely stuff that film content is amazing at. Actors. Have you played a video game recently? You guys are definitely still winning on that. But we are. There's definitely things that live action makes sense for, but with real time, we can make stuff. And you guys who work in VFX, you know that it's probably not a good idea to build the helicarrier and point a camera at it. It's probably a better idea to put it on a computer, and then you've got it. And with real time, we can do that. So yeah, we're working on VR with real time. We're using Unity at the moment, but Unreal's fantastic. CryEngine's doing some very cool stuff. And we can create, real, believable worlds. I think the other thing with VR that's very interesting, that is something that's very hard to explain if to people who've not tried it, is VR makes stuff look realistic in a way that's very difficult to explain. A lot of the early VR demos that are being made, because they require such high processing power, they're actually a graphical step down. If you watch video of them, as you would a traditional trailer for a video game, they look a bit naff. But when you play them, there's a solidity because of things like parallax and stereo that you can go, that table's there.
It's what they say at the moment. I mean, with our clients, they keep on expecting sort of Jurassic Park or Avatar with an Oculus Rift headset. And what we keep on saying to them is that it's actually the concept of presence, which keeps on coming up again and again, which is basically you can believe a VR environment if the latency is if there's zero latency and the frame rate's high enough that you move your head and there's no lag. And the graphics quality is almost secondary to that, and this is something we're trying to get our clients to understand at the moment.
It's
very difficult to explain.
But the presence thing's fascinating, and it's a buzzword that we are going to all massively overuse in the coming years. But it's actually true, and for me, interaction is tied directly into that, because humans test their world. Your brain sees something and it's trying to work out, is this real? Is this real? Is this? Am I here? Is this all going on? You're constantly trying to unpick the world around you, and video obviously very linear. You can't change that. You can't interact with it. If you can move things, you can pick up objects in real time. You can do. You can literally move around a space and notice parallax between objects, things like that. that all massively grounds the experience, and it rewires the way you remember things. And this, I always sound very hyperbolic, but my girlfriend genuinely turned to me yesterday and asked me where the stapler was. And my memory of the last stapler I interacted with was in a VR game, Job Simulator. Exactly, Job Simulator is a very, very cool demo. And I said, "Oh, it's on my desk. It's to the left of the phone. That's not my desk." And it's that weird moment where you go, "Oh, this is real." And there's amazing the benefits, the health benefits. You mentioned the treatment of the burns victim. This stuff is real, and it's very powerful in that regard. Obviously, there are also lots of unexplored negative connotations to this kind of presence. But yeah, so interaction's core to that, to my mind, although I do love 360 video as well. And I think as well, 360 video is much more accessible. I mean, that's the big thing, and which is what we're going to need in the first few years. And I presume that 360 video, you guys are going to work out ways to make that really interactive and really deep.
It's kind of like, it's almost like the gateway drug to VR, if you like. And it's something that... our VR department sits within the commercial team as opposed to the film team, although we do work on film IP. So the kind of clients that we talk to understand video and understand ads. So one thing that we try to do, like Andy does, it's more about quality of the experience than it is about quality of the image, which is a very difficult message to convey when 30 years of your business has been about attaining BAFTAs and Oscars and VS awards for quality of your imagery. But the very first VR experience we did was done in Unity, actually, like 2 or 3 years ago for Game of Thrones. And you go in the lift, you go up the wall, you get shot by wildlings and all that stuff. And if you look at the quality of the imagery, it looks a bit like Duke Nukem. And when you look at it in the DK1, which is what we first did it in, which, if you don't know, is the first Oculus developer kit headset, it looked like Doom. But the experience after 15, 30 seconds, because you are grounded in that environment, because it is stereo, because you have depth of field, you have sense of depth, and we made the floor shake and we had some wind fans and stuff. You believe after 15, 20 seconds, you're getting lobbed off a 700-foot wall. And even when we do those kind of demos now, we've rebooted them slightly in a better engine, so fidelity's better to match the new headsets. The countless demos we've done of that in a boardroom with 10 other people, and you're there, and you could be in an environment like this and you think you're about to get thrown off a wall. So it's a powerful medium. It's different to what clients and people are used to, and I think it's very easy to assume, because it's all we do for 5 days, more like 7 days a week, is work in VR and talk about VR, that everyone knows everything about it. And the fact is, and according to Adam's report, very few people really do outside of,
And
people in this
we're going
cinema.
to have to explain to them via 2D media. That's the really weird part. It's like, those old DVD trailers you had on VHSs where it was like, this is what video looked like on VHS, and now this is DVD, and you're like, I'm still watching a VHS, this doesn't make sense. And we're going to have that, but like more so with VR, because the trailer for my game is going to be watched predominantly by people in 2D, and they're probably going to look at it and go, yeah, that looks like a video game that was released this year or last year. It's not going to have that tech.
I think that's an interesting point, though, isn't it, about technical precision versus the creative? Because I think, certainly us who come from post backgrounds are kind of basically a bunch of sort of pixel fuckers, really, and we are upset. I certainly grew up kind of obsessed with the technical precision of what we do, and finishing commercials. If it's got a pixel wrong, it's properly wrong. So I think perhaps we have to bend a little bit. I mean, I definitely want to make work that has craft to it, and I think there is a vacuum in what we do to make properly crafted VR experiences.
I think that's where the commercial space. If you worked in VFX,
yes,
in a commercial or feature film, that's the production values of what we're used to is where we should set the bar in the future.
It's also not laziness. It's which pixels you're fucking. Yeah.
Yes.
So like with with VR,
Some
like
preferable than others.
yeah, well, you're talking about the visual, and the visual is massively crucial. But anyone who's into video games, a gamer, will say that that I want the precision in the interaction, I want the precision in the game, in the design experience that's happening. It's still pedantic pixel fuckery.
Yes.
I'm just trying to get every possible use of that word I can. But it doesn't. But it's just refocused in a different direction, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point I was going to make though was we are kind of obsessed with this, and we get a lot of satisfaction out of crafting a nice film, essentially. But I think because of the technical limitations of what's possible at the moment, I mean, I certainly find myself, dictating what is and isn't possible, and you have to work within these parameters. But I think sometimes we have to perhaps bend those a little bit, and allow some errors to enter into our work, perhaps, for the benefit of the end creative result.
I think that's the key differential between errors in 360 video, which do make a big difference to the experience, and errors by way of poorer graphics per se in the game engine that actually don't make a difference to the experience. So that's why, to slightly contradict myself where I say it's quality of experience, not quality of imagery. Actually, in 360 video, something poorly shot with stitch lines and, people crossing each other and they disappear for 15 frames and then they reappear again, that breaks that sense of presence because you're not grounded. In a game engine where you can, within confines of your graphics processor, do whatever you want to do, it's a lot more forgiving.
But I mean, I feel like maybe I have a slightly more optimistic view of the future there. But I feel like there is you can see that over time there are things out there that have this promise of really bridging the gap between like photographic content and interactive content, and like with light field technology, where you suddenly, if you haven't seen it, I would recommend watching. There's a video series on YouTube from the VS on light field technology and how that may apply to VR. And you see that there's a promise there that you will be able to capture photoreal environments and then combine them with interactive
absolutely.
experience.
So we already see this in the development of video game graphics, just traditional like Lara Croft, how that's progressed over the years. And I'm certain that we'll get to a point where this conversation seems very soon.
And so I think, to me, and maybe I'm naive there, but this idea of whether VR has legs or not, I almost don't think about that anymore. To me, it's just a question of like, when will it hit? Will it hit this year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? But I cannot imagine a world, in particular also because of the overlap with augmented reality and mixed reality, the economic case for augmented reality technology is so incredibly high because there's so many professional applications for it.
It's 5 times, the predictions of revenue are 5 times that of VR. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying there's not one thing I was saying to Andy before is we wouldn't all be sat here talking to you if we didn't think there was a future. And if we did sit here and tell you there wasn't, I'd get P45'd on the way back to the office.
Does everyone think the same, that the VR is now, there's no question, it's not an if, it's a when?
Absolutely. I think it's a when and it's a how much. Like in terms of the distinction you made that no one's going to be throwing their TVs out, I think is a valid. I think VR is a new media, but I think it is a new media that has legs. Yeah,
it is, but I think there's still the question about how it's going to be adopted. Is it that we're just going to be watching YouTube 360 videos? Is that the end point we're going to get to at the end of the year? And is that going to be enough?
I think it's almost impossible to predict, isn't it? It's like, it's the old classic analogy of the mobile phone. You never knew what it was going to turn into a smartphone type thing. But I think we can't really predict what it will be. I think personally it will merge into one, really. There won't be the separation of game engine stuff. Or everything will be real time, basically.
But it will also, I think a big part of it, not to forget, it will be social, right?
Yes.
It will be something that people will want to do together. Because and I think there's sort of this negative idea out there that, like, it would be like this isolating thing where people put on their glasses and never come out. But you look even at like games, I mean, the number one thing people want to do when they play games is play games with other people, and people want to experience VR and AR with other people.
I saw that. It's like, I saw a game the other day where you probably know it, I can't remember the name of it, and they all like have a little dance in the middle. They meet in a place.
Oh, Destiny, I think probably, or any MMO,
The social side is really interesting, and you're right. People think of it as being a solitary experience.
Facebook wouldn't have invested in a solitary experience.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they've just done their big push for social VR, haven't they? In the last couple of days, after that rather draconian image of 8,000 people at Mobile World Congress, all in gear VR, which I'm not. Yeah, I don't think. I think, like I said, 360 video is a good entry point. It's something people can get their heads around. I've got friends that don't work in my industry that are dentists sharing 360 videos on Facebook because it's cool and interesting. It's definitely not the be all and end all, I don't think.
I mean, it definitely seems like we're going to go through several stages. As soon as our phones have cameras on the back and front, then we'll just be taking snaps of our exciting moment that we're having right now and sharing that with all our friends. And that will be driven by the camera capture technology. That will all go to YouTube 360 and the cardboard output from YouTube 360. And then there's natural extensions to that. There's capturing light fields, and then you can put on a headset, and then you can lean into the content. And then it feels much more, or you'll feel much more immersed inside it. And the step beyond that is the augmented reality, isn't it? Yeah. So that's the 1 or 2 year timescale.
I think it needs a consumer champion from a hardware manufacturer. I think so far you've got Oculus and sort of Vive and all the rest of them, which are very expensive. I think mobile phones are probably the future of an entry point, but I wouldn't discount, even though they're late to the party, what Apple are going to do. They've got a huge history of bringing consumer products to market that nobody wants. And like the iPad, I was saying earlier before the talk that the iPad is a marketing is an amazing feat of marketing. They invented an ecosystem for something that nobody really needs, but everyone ended up sort of having. And I think Apple have got all the bits in their toolbox in order to make this an incredible experience. I think as soon as they crack VR with their new VR team, I think it's going to be interesting.
They literally just hired the guy that wrote the book on designing 3D interfaces for applications exactly like this. Exactly. And when they do something, when they make something, as much as you love them or hate them, everything resets at that point. Like, and there was quite a good analogy on Twitter I saw the other day where people were saying about the price of headsets, saying that, Vive, it's $800, it's too expensive. Oculus is $600, it's too much. The winner's going to be PlayStation because it's $300. And then someone very tongue-in-cheek replied saying, iPhone never going to work, $550. BlackBerry never going to work, $300. Palm Pilot's going to win, it's $150. So you can't. And it did.
I'm really sorry, guys. On that note, we're going to have to stop. We've run out of time. We could talk about this for hours, I think. But I think it's fairly clear that the consensus on the panel is that the VR is really just a question of timescales. It's not a question of if. And I think it's safe to say it's going to be fairly big. It's very exciting times. So thank you very much. I don't know if we've got any times for questions at all.
We could do really quick, and then the next.
A really quick question.
One thing we haven't touched on much is the creative aspect of it. That might be worth it.
You're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna get in trouble.
To be honest, there are loads of things we haven't touched on.
I
have loads of questions, but any questions at all? Have we got a microphone at all that goes out, or just going to shout? Thank you very much. Okay. There's one question there, and
Hiya. Just wondering about the potential viability of. It seems interesting that VFX companies are pushing this, whereas traditionally VFX has always required thousands of people in a process like that to create what they're doing. But it seems like there's a lot more opportunity for small studios to create more content but potentially more user-based content, so like your YouTube 360 videos, to actually rival that. So just wondering what your thoughts are in terms of creating feature VR experiences versus shorter films and shorter VR experiences, and who might overtake who.
Feature length.
Yeah, because as I said, like it's quite a solitary experience.
Yeah. I don't think anyone wants to wear that for like 2.5 hours right now.
That's what I mean. So in terms of VFX companies championing that, it's quite strange to wonder what the commercial viability of investing in that is for their output.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's probably a little bit different in the sense that we're part of Disney, and with an IP like Star Wars, there's a huge variety of opportunities for us there. Not the least, you look at things like theme parks is something where audiences don't have to buy their own equipment. You can have the latest cutting-edge equipment in there, and then you can have experiences that are really, really compelling, that have a high production value, and you can churn like a lot of people through that. So, like that kind of content is something that actually you could justify a fairly high investment in the long run.
Yeah. I think also, we're currently at the stage where the form factor of these things is a bit uncomfortable. No one really has tested watching a feature film in this environment. It may be uncomfortable, maybe not. I mean, I actually don't mind watching Netflix in this thing. I could watch that for quite a long time. But for us, we're primarily involved in making commercials. Brands always want to associate themselves and become closest to the story. And they want to find an emotional message to put across to people. And really, there isn't another medium that does that as successfully as this. You can tell a story and translate yourself into that place, unlike anything else. So there's the commercial value.
I think you'll get the same ecosystem that you seem to have with films, and you definitely have with games, where the of all the VR experiences I've had, I'd say the more innovative and exciting and fresh stuff has been from two people in a bedroom coding and making something interesting, or going out with a camera and making something cool. But then, yes, we can't compete on production value. I can't make something that looks as cool as anyone else on this panel because they have the resources and this talent and this experience that I don't have access to. So so they're going to be making really cool, big stuff. Feature, I think, is a bad word because of the time connotation, but definitely, I rode the new Star Tours at Disney World a couple of weeks ago, which I assume was kind of heading in that direction and had all the 3D stuff and everything, and it's amazing. These experiences that you can do when you have something like Star Wars are phenomenal. So I think it will be that kind of, I'm trying to think of an analogy, but it will be the luxury version of the content, whereas maybe if you want the more pokey, weird stuff, the difference between having a Blu-ray copy of a film and a Netflix watch of the film, it's different tiers.
I mean, the other thing is just quickly, just to say, I think all of us like breaking boundaries visually and stuff, isn't it? That's why we're involved in VFX. But that doesn't mean to say that people in smaller studios and stuff can't produce good quality content. In fact, it's really about the idea. It is all about the idea. And I think at the moment what we have is a situation where about 80% of what people see through there is kind of novelty, wow factor stuff. And we need to be producing good quality content that lasts for a long time. And there hasn't been that many experiences like that. And the smaller studios are equally capable of producing good quality ideas as well as big studios. It's not all about the flashing lights.
And in terms of producing just short time content, I mean, these experiences are all between 3, 6, 9 minutes absolute tops. And they are for co-marketing, commercials. But there are other potentials for this sort of content as well. So there's some interesting work for journalism. So you get to see and experience what it's like to be a refugee, see an event as it unfolds somewhere in the world. That's another area. There's also episodic content. So great example I would like to see. I love watching Walking Dead. Every time there's a Walking Dead episode, I'd love to just download 2 minutes and watch what it was really like to be there. There's so many opportunities, even with just 2 or 3 minutes. But don't be fooled, just 2 or 3 minutes is a significant amount of effort. It's not a small studio who produces 2 or 3 minute high quality content. There are a lot of people involved. It costs a lot of money.
And to be the real-time evangelist again, you can get a lot of reuse out of stuff. All of the games I've played in VR are about an hour, 2 hour experiences broken up episodically because we can reuse stuff. We can take something and repurpose it and give you, Mario, you don't see new stuff every screen of Mario. You see the same kind of things repeated. And there's opportunity there for making longer form. The game we're working on is about 2-3 hours. You're not meant to play it in more than about 10-minute chunks because of the massive nausea issues that we're still working on. But yeah, I think there's opportunities there with real time that we can use stuff.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're massively over time now. So thank you very much, everyone on the panel, and thank you very much for listening.